I'm not quite sure whether I can single out one specific moment or one specific thing. I think there have been many. Some of the things that I can talk about are tangible and visible, whether it's new pieces of legislation like the Domestic Violence Act or the Sexual Offences Act, or how we defeated the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, or how now we've managed to get women's rights issues into the new draft Constitution. So those are the more tangible things, right? The visible things, if you can name them as that. But there's less tangible things, I think, that I also want to celebrate and that have been pivotal in the growth of the women's movement, growth in terms of numbers, growth in terms of its own maturity, but growth in terms of the multifocal lenses that the movement has, and the multiple agendas that the movement has. So for me, and as somebody who I suppose that's the period I could relate to most, the birth of a whole range of new, exciting women's organizations at different epochs. So if I talk about the 1990s, the birth of Musasa coming out of Women's Action Group, to focus on the issue of violence against women, providing shelter, doing policy advocacy. That was new for us. The birth of the Women and AIDS Support Network, one of the first organizations in this country to deal with HIV and to put a women's rights perspective onto what was then an emerging epidemic and very much unknown about, and has continued to be a voice for women. The birth of Women in Law in Southern Africa, which was born in this country, as you may know, to begin to do research and to fill the gaps in our knowledge and in our policy advocacy as well. And this all happened in the short space of 3 or 4 years. And then, of course, the birth of the Zimbabwe Women's Resource Center. And this happened, as I said, in a space of 3 or 4 years. And I fast forward now to the formation of new, exciting women's organizations that are talking about lesbian, bi, and transgender women's rights issues. Things that some of us had never even heard about, let alone consider working on. And there's brave, young organizations that are heading into those waters, and very loudly, to organizations working with sex workers. Sex workers themselves coming together to organize themselves, right, and have their own movements. I could go on and on. So as I said, there's been the tangible stuff that you can name and you can date, but there is the organizing and the movement building and the picking up of issues and the visibilizing issues that is much less tangible, but you can feel it and you can see it. And so for me, that's what I would highlight has been exciting for me over the last sort of 10, 15 years. I know that there are so many issues that many of us would have wanted to see in this new constitution, and the ones that you name are some of them. But I want to say, for me personally, as a pragmatist, as a political activist, I want to say you also need to look at the political moment in which you are and say to yourself, what was possible at this moment and what was not possible? And if it's not possible at this moment, then when will it be possible? It is not about postponing issues. It's not about sweeping issues under the carpet. It's simply being strategic and knowing your context. So for me, yes, I'm sad. For instance, issues around sex, sexuality, sexual rights issues, issues of choice, I would have wanted them writ large. But if you consider the fact that Zimbabwe has become so culturally and religiously, dare I use the word, backward in the last 10 to 15 years, there is no hope that we were ever going to get that into any draft anything. I have been personally shocked by the intolerance, the hate speech, the way in which there is no more secular space in this country. Every conceivable space has been taken over by the Christian right. And so, and this has infiltrated the political agenda, right? You see the political movements falling over each other to court the religious right. And so there is no way that we were going to get some of those issues writ large. Yes, that's an ongoing agenda. That's a critical agenda that we're going to have to push. And that's why we are here. That's why we have movements. There will be other moments. There will be other opportunities. And that's what we need now to identify and to begin to set a new agenda. I think for me, I'm just so glad if we can get this constitution now out of the way. It is now time to talk not even about these elections in the next 2 to 3 months. I think for me, those are almost done and dusted. What we now need to be doing is to seize the moment and begin to set a new agenda, a completely new agenda that goes beyond Bob and Morgan. Let me put it that way, right? Right now, the entire discourse is about Bob and Morgan. I'm tired of Bob and Morgan. They're not the only pony show in town. Let's set a new agenda. Let's talk about what are the new issues. Let's put those on the table. Begin to educate people. Begin to mobilize women around those new issues or the pending issues and transcend this particular moment. That's where the women's movement should and could be going.